Hey everyone, this is Bobby Carlton from FS Studio, and of course, I am joined by my colleague Pete over here. And Pete is in the Mozilla Hubs avatar, and I am, of course, using the Ready Player Me avatar. And we were last week. We were in one virtual space. We were in our AltSpace VR world, and we were talking about the pros and cons of that space. And we decided we're going to move on into the Mozilla Hubs space and again dive into those pros and cons. So let's just kind of go right into it. So Pete, let's you're the guy, you put these together, you understand how these work. So from your perspective, let's talk about what are the pros and cons of these.
Right. So when we're talking pros and cons, you got to remember it's sort of same people, same process designers use, and a lot of other occupations use. You have different audiences. So you talk about a user, and you talk about user stories and that sort of thing. But it's important to also identify different types of users. So in a VR space, I consider that there are three types of users. One are just the normal people who are going to come and attend an event or come and see your cool space and play around in it. And they aren't creators. They don't have special permissions in the place. They're just kind of like a visitor to a mall or whatever. What is the experience for that person? One of the things we look at is friction. So how easy is it for them to get in here? And how easy is it for them to figure out the basics, like how do I move around, etc. And so from a pros and cons standpoint, Mozilla Hubs is certainly in the top, I'll say three. I haven't tried every single platform out there, but with the platforms that we have tried, I would actually even say that it's probably the easiest one or the lowest friction for the average person to just come in. Because it's web-based, it all runs in your browser. So all you really have to do is send someone a link. You can encode that link into a QR code so they can just scan the QR code and automatically go there. It's supported, because it's web-based, it's supported on almost every platform. And I believe the first time that you came to visit me in Hubs, and I was all thrilled that I got the whole thing up and running, which I'll get to later, is the developer part. But I think I sent you an invite and you showed up within 2 minutes. Yeah. And you said, hey, I'm out jogging and I got a thing on my phone and I just clicked it and whoa, I'm in here. And I was just so blown away that it was that easy for you to come in. Yeah, and it wasn't like, oh, my phone, I already had some app installed or some special thing. It was just a link in an email or something that I sent you. And boom, you just click the link and you're pretty much in here. And that is very, very impressive. So that's probably the biggest pro of Mozilla Hubs, is that it's super, super easy for people to come in.
It's got to be a frictionless entry point. It's got to be easy to use. And, and Mozilla Hubs isn't the only one.
And supported on many platforms.
Yep.
So
Spatial also does, they're supported on other platforms as well.
Yeah, I would say Spatial's probably second, if not maybe equal. And I don't want to knock Spatial too much because I haven't had a lot of experience with Spatial. I've definitely had more experience with Hubs. But so, if we want to, instead of going who's first, second, third, let's just say Hubs has AAA user friction rating, and that would basically take into account how easy it is to click a link and get in, plus the width of their platform support. And while we're sort of talking about the width of their platform support, one of the great things about Hubs is it also has a very good depth of platform support. So what I mean by that is this technology is all based on WebXR. And some other technologies. You could sort of create a social virtual space that's very, very low friction, very easy to get in. And there are lots of these, and you can, roll your own quite easily. But then the problem becomes, I have a Quest headset, and when I go in there, I'm on a little 2D browser screen, and I'm not seeing a VR experience, a true VR experience. So Hubs is very good. And here's just a little bit of backstory. Hubs is owned by Mozilla, created by Mozilla. Mozilla had another product called Firefox Reality. And so Mozilla has been very active in the development of WebXR. And so they developed a lot of the features that are in WebXR, and in particular, a lot of the features that let you move around in a virtual world.
Pete, from your perspective, would you say, now, just an FYI, I came from the background of virtual reality in education, like, and how could VR technologies be applied into learning environments? And one platform that I saw a lot of value in was Mozilla Hubs. Do you, from your perspective, do you see the same thing? Do you see Mozilla Hubs as being like that really great, not only is it easy, frictionless to enter, but easy to create assets in, and could be used?
Well, let's then let's segue, because we're starting to talk about the other two user groups that I mentioned at the beginning. So, I think we've done the user. So it's from a guest or a visitor to your VR experience. We've done that. We've done how much friction it is for them, etc. Is there any other pros and cons for that user? Well, the pro is, if they have a headset, they're going to see decent. They're gonna be able to use their headset and actually go in VR. And I was just recently got my Windows mixed reality headset going on my desktop machine again, and I was now able to try coming into Hub's experience as a visitor using a Windows mixed reality headset. And again, the experience was pretty seamless. And in fact, when you go into Hubs, there's three buttons. It says join room. The second button says enter on device. And if you click that button, you get a 4-digit code that you enter, so you don't have to remember a big long URL. The Mozilla Hub supports a feature called a short. They basically they want you to have a very short domain name as just like a shortcut. And so you basically, all you have to do is go to the shortcut link and then enter that 4-digit code. So for the experience for a visitor to your world who does want to use the Quest headset, it's also very low friction. And usually that may be a problem with some other VR platforms that are kind of low friction to get into. But then if you have a headset, all of a sudden the friction goes way up. That's where I would sort of say probably Hubs is the number one there. They've got the headset thing covered pretty well. And so then let's move on to that next group, who are the content creators, but they're not really developers. They're not coders. They're not going to create new behaviors, but they're going to get 3D models, images, videos, sound files, take the model. So we have this gorgeous model that was made in Blender. Obviously, it's like, well, this week we want to have a sign that says this. And they, if we're having events in your VR space, or even daily, if we're having meetings, you know what I mean? It would be really cool to have a sign so someone could come into the hub here and go, oh, am I in any meetings? Or are there any sort of meetings or they're not even meetings, but maybe as a company we want to start having information sessions. Like you used to have the old company, and they'd say, "Oh, the insurance people are here at 2:00. If you want to review your insurance, you have our blessing to go and meet with them." So, but for all of those things, you kind of need to have changing signage. We can't really bake that into the main model, so it's important that you be able to have content creators go into the VR world. So the VR world or platform needs to have tools in it for you to import all the goodies. So even the basic model is a 3D file. It's usually a special file that's like the background environment. But then you also, at runtime, you want to be able to create new things. And so for content creators with Hubs, it's a little complicated. Let's start with the easiest thing. So in the world right now, we can create objects. And over there, There's something I created earlier.
Oh, look at that.
And I didn't create this. Oh, I just dropped it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's falling down. Which is, every platform, everybody who's ever worked in 3D is like, I fell through the floor, and they fall, or the objects fall through the floor. So that's pretty common. That's a pretty common screw up. But in any case, what the point I'm trying to make is it's very easy to bring objects into this world behind the scenes. You create a Sketchfab account, and you get maybe an API key from Sketchfab, and you go and you plug it into the admin backend here, and now we can all kind of basically go up here and click the create button. So yeah, now it's basically you can't see this, but I'm outside in the browser window, and it's asking me to pick a model. So I'll pick the same one I had. I'll click continue. It's up here. I can see it.
I can see it.
So it was super easy for me to go and import that model. So that's kind of a pro, but it could be a con if this all relates to sort of access control. Do you let every visitor access that feature? In which case, there's going to be some visitor that goes, oh, this 40 million polygon model is awesome, and they'll bring in some giant model, and then all of a sudden everybody in here is lagging, and maybe they even crash everybody.
It's interesting when you think about. I've been to conferences, for example, in Engage, where the moderator has the ability to turn off people bringing 3D objects, and there are times when it's appropriate, but there's times during a conference when it's not. And so having those tools, a lot of UX design comes from those tools for moderating a space. From your perspective, Pete, how should UX designers approach just the menu of a moderator or tool?
Well, here's where you just sort of made me think that, okay, I'm saying there's 3 types of user stories that should be considered, but then there's another type of user, which is a moderator. And if you look at all the social VR platforms, they've already kind of, figured that out, and they usually will have several, several roles they can assign to you. You cannot create a public space that everybody can come to and not have idiots and we call them griefers, okay?
Yeah.
And they will come, and if you allow them to import models, there's going to be somebody who goes, oh, great, and they're going to upload. I mean, if they're really malicious, they could upload child pornography, and now all of a sudden that's on the servers, and we're all downloading it, so now it's on all our headsets. And technically, that's all it takes for us to be charged. You know what I mean? It's not knowingly going and getting child pornography. It's just, oh, you have that on your computer, therefore that's bad. So moderation is something that absolutely, absolutely has to be taken into account right from the very beginning. But you have different use cases, so and trust circles, let's call them. So what you were mentioning earlier about being in education, so a trust circle would be everybody who's in your classroom. And they're in your classroom because they want to take a degree, and they're motivated not to be an idiot because they won't get their degree, they'll get kicked out, whatever. But that means that you now have to go back to that user concept and say, right, well, we can't just let everybody in.
Right.
We want to have a trust circle. So what kind of mechanisms are available to moderate? And so that brings it to, I'll say the room owner, okay? The room admin to decide what kind of trust circle is appropriate for that group. And if you're really going to have an event where you're kind of inviting the general public, then you have to staff it, and you have to say, okay, like a space like this, if we have an event here, we probably want to have somebody, and you could see this from almost all of these social VR places. I think, like, for example, Altspace has a campfire, and they have staff at the campfire to kind of help people, but they're mainly there to watch out for the weirdos and boot them as soon as they try anything funny. right?
Yes, and believe it or not, I've actually had to use them. I've been in outspace, and then I've been in situations where I've had to go to the campfire moderator and be like, "Hey, there's somebody here," and it wasn't like they were bothering me, but they were definitely there, sort of spreading their politics in a very aggressive way, So it's interesting that we need to have those type of individuals in those spaces.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a very fuzzy line between free speech and
Sure.
like hate speech or posting illegal content. I mean, it like clearly everybody would agree that if somebody comes in and they sorry about that, I just accidentally moved. But yeah, I mean, if somebody comes in and like my example, if they start putting pictures of child pornography up, I mean, everybody's going to agree that person should be banned. But if someone comes in and starts talking about politics, and they weren't in an aggressive manner and abusive, using abusive language, well, that's kind of okay. But then if they start using abusive language, well, then they're a nuisance to everybody. So it very much mimics real life. I mean, like when you go out in public, you may see people in public talking about things or behaving in certain ways that you don't like. And, well, in real life, you don't have any control over that. And the cool thing is in virtual reality, you can just point at somebody and press the asshole button and boom, they're gone. You don't see them anymore.
We're gonna have to bleep you again, Pete. But you're right. That's the thing with virtual reality. There's all these tools in these virtual platforms, right? The bubble, right? The protective bubble.
Yeah.
You can either hide. You can make yourself invisible. You can choose to block somebody from your own, visual landscape, or where other people could see them. So there are all these amazing tools that can be used to help give you a positive virtual reality experience. And of course, in the workforce, if we're using like a VR hub such as ours, that could also be something like you could come across an employee that you don't get along with, or maybe there's an argument and you just need to leave the room, but you work in a virtual space. So I could see how all of that could still play a role, not only in the social, but in work environments.
Well, and that's what makes people behave in every situation, whether it's online in Teams, whether it's sending email between people or in a social VR place. Is basically a social contract and social pressure. If you don't conform, everybody, it starts out by everybody ignoring you, and then eventually everybody actively, looks for a cop, and it's like that person's totally just, so there's a whole range of that. And
do you think as companies start to adopt these type of platforms to work in, that they need to maybe have a person like that, or do you think that's done through HR in general?
Well, it depends on what you're using VR for and what the social circle you're trying to support. So if you're trying to create VR worlds that are based for your business, I mean, if you have some, I don't think you're going to have someone that comes into a VR place that you're using for business, for internal use, and starts acting like a jerk that wouldn't act like a jerk in their email or in their, a jerk's a jerk. They doesn't magically become a jerk just because you're in VR. Where you sort of magically get to become a jerk is when you're anonymous, which happens in a lot of social platforms. It can happen in real life too. I mean, go to the other part of town and you're probably more likely to, lower some of your filters and behave more like a jerk. They're aware, but I mean, that needs to be built into the core. And some of these platforms have built that into a core. So Mozilla Hubs, so that's actually getting over into talking about the developer and what you can do as a developer. But there are some built-in mechanisms for Mozilla Hubs to restrict access, but they're kind of broad.
Okay.
Basically, because I own the room, I can point at Alan, and I have two options here. One says hide, and one says kick. So I can kick him out. I can hide you, mute you, or kick you. But when you point at me, you probably can't kick me out because I own the room. But you can probably point at Alan and mute him or kick him out. Okay, so basically you have room owners and they have the tools to appoint other people to do things in their world under different roles. So you might be able to appoint people as moderators who would have the ability to kick and ban people. So, and that's what you want to have at an event. You want to have several moderators in our world. We probably want one down here and one or two at the main stage, and maybe one up in each of those wings up there to basically, and that's assuming you got a full crowd, like 50 people. If you've only got 10 people or they're all there, then you might only need one moderator. But then another type of role that you can usually assign to people is creator. A creator would have the ability to, if you turn off the ability to create things, which in this room we just sort of showed that, yeah, anybody can create things. Although actually you are a moderator and you are a moderator as well. So, but we can say, people can come in to visit, but they can't create things unless they're on this special list. And then at that point, you'd be able to create things. I don't know if you want to call it a pro or con. So basically Hubs has two different main ways to create things. So they've got something called the spoke editor, which if you come in and before you come into the world, you probably see at the top, it says scene editor or something like that.
Right.
And it's a web-based app that lets you import things. Like, for example, you import this model here that we're standing in is the main sort of feature. But then it also lets you place special objects that have special behavior in the room. So, for example, on each of these pillars, and I mean, I haven't taken the time to position them nicely, but the idea, I was basically created all of these objects above the pillars, and they're called links. They have the ability to take you to a different VR world in Mozilla Hubs, but they also have the ability to just let you click and load your website into another tab of your browser. And what I'm trying to do with them is they also have the ability to teleport somewhere else inside the same model using a special syntax. But the problem with these links is they automatically take a thumbnail of whatever target you tell them to go to, and the thumbnail for anything and anywhere in this room, it always looks the same. One of the cons of Hubs is they don't have a lot of mature features that some of the other places have. Mm-hmm. That what I would expect is if you have something called a link, I'm going to be able to put it somewhere, and then I'm going to be able to say, here's an image for the link, and I don't want you to go get a thumbnail. This is the image, period. Or here's a 3D model, period. But the only kind of link that you can get out of the box is this sort of one that automatically goes and takes a thumbnail, and that doesn't really do it for me. You know what I mean?
Why do you think some platforms do that? Is it just because to make it easier for people to entry? It's sort of like that whole sort of like give and take in order to make it easier for entry point when you take away certain features, maybe.
Well, it's kind of like this is the minimum useful thing, but they haven't done any more to expand it. So it's like I was saying earlier about, yeah, you can go create a VR world and everybody can come to it in the browser, but then so that's broad support. So this link thing, that's broad support, but it's very shallow. It's like, here's a link, but if it doesn't do what you want, too bad. You know what I mean? And that's sort of, and it's not like you're sort of expecting some brilliant behavior that they couldn't have predicted. There's been 30 VR platforms before Hubs that all have links that go places, and they don't force you to have the same thumbnail for every link. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's sort of, okay, you did the bare minimum, but it's not good enough. So now you have to go and customize Hubs. And that sort of leads to another con with hubs, although I've got to say it's a pro. So a lot of the platforms that we look at, they don't have any support for scripting. You can't make any sort of behavior, and that's pretty lame. I mean, that's you need to be able to do that to sort of push the envelope. You know what I mean?
Right.
Hubs does let you customize, but there's no modularity or API. There's no sort of like, here's how you create an extension for hubs. And a lot of the other platforms, they do. So Second Life used to let you attach a script to an object, and they had their own special language, and you wrote special behavior for that object. In hubs, you can't attach a script to a link or an object. Like if I could just put a sphere there and then attach a script to it, and in the script I would say, oh, well, when you click this, it takes you up there. You know what I mean? But we don't have that in hubs. We basically have to modify the entire hub server. So all the code that lets you join and create a room and all of that code, and all I want to do is I want to create a little sphere and be able to click on it. You know what I mean? So it's sort of, they do let you customize it, but the con is it's like you're customizing the whole thing, and it's risky because if I do something over here, I risk making the server completely not work, and now you can't log in anywhere. Right. And how do I fix that? You know what I mean? That's from a developer point of view, a deep right. developer. From a content creator's point of view, yeah, I mean, it has all the basics of being able to import images and objects. We could actually make the visuals here look a lot nicer. But again, even that, it means we can't use the spoke editor. We have to use this Blender exporter. And if we really want to customize, if I want to create, for example, we were in that job fair right. a couple of weeks ago, and someone had made a what I could consider a traditional teleporter booth that I've seen since Active Worlds back in around the year 2000. And mm-hmm. it's an object with signage and maybe a particle system that, hey, if you walk into this booth, it's going to teleport you to another place. We don't have that here, and it's like, why don't we have that here? But just recently, they released a video on how to create that, which is a pro. You can do it. But the con is it's a very involved process that requires you to know a bunch of very specific specialty things. So, for example, if you want to add one of these teleport booths, the first thing you have to do is get their Blender exporter and modify their Blender exporter, which is kind of non-intuitive. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, I agree with you. Well, with that said, I think those are actually really great words to end on. I wanted to thank everybody who tuned in and watched this as Pete really dug into the pros and cons of Mozilla Hubs, and I think we really sort of a lot of interesting things came up to the surface, and I think things that we can sort of continue those conversations, not only as we go to other spaces, but even as we work on Mozilla Hubs here. So thanks everybody for listening. My name is Bobby Carlton, and I am with FS Studio, and this is, of course, Everything Metaverse. And of course, Pete, thank you for your time and your expertise.
Always enjoy it.
Awesome.